love just like that random interaction of like, let's just see what happens when we reach out to people. And what I find is everybody wants to be able to talk about being a dad and their kids and what it's like, you know, and I think it's amazing. And I think this is going to get us started off really well. And so I was scrolling through your Instagram and you were on, I'm guessing, another podcast. And you talked on that podcast about how you don't work to be a businessman. You work to fund your lifestyle, in essence. And that resonated with so much with me because I think once Sloan was born, everything changed for me in terms of that, because I was like, I'm going to be a fucking businessman. I'm going to have 6 offices. I'm going to do all this stuff. I'm going to work 80 hours a week. Like, I'm going to hang my hat on that. And dude, once she was born, I'm like, all I want to do is spend time with this thing. I don't want to do any of those other things. And so now I've kind of like slowly been reverse engineering more now than ever how I'm going to do that. And so I'm interested, was that always your approach towards life? Or when you had your child, was it like, oh shit, I want more of this, you know?
So, yeah. I mean, I kind of went through some waves, I think. I used to own a couple martial arts schools in Florida before what I call like discovering the internet. So like I was paying rent. You know, my buddy Vit and I were owners of the business together. So we were there at, first thing in the morning, last people there at night. We were the janitors, the teachers, the everything, right?
Yeah.
And so at that point in my life, I was single. I was sleeping on the ground it was like broke, it didn't matter. I was just balls to the wall kind of thing. I wanted to grow that business. We grew it to like 100 people, which sounded really cool, but we were still broke. We made some big mistakes in business. Like we were paying too much in rent. I was paying over $10,000 a month in rent. I didn't have $10,000. So we had to borrow money. We had to take loans. We had to get whole bunch of crazy stuff going on. Eventually, we got to the point with 100 and so students. We were just over break even, which means I was perfectly broke. So it was
perfect. Like, that's such a good description.
Got my expenses paid, and now I'm on zero but food stamps. So it's like it was not the best. But at that point, I was definitely wanting to make a lot more money, right? So that was kind of the time where I was balls to the wall. I want to go get rich. I want to do, a bunch of stuff. And I heard about these online marketers and things like that, and kind of discredited it as like a brick and mortar person. At least myself, I looked at people who made money online as scammers and like dorks. I was like, can I curse on this show?
Oh, well, fuck is every other word out of my mouth. Okay, so your kids, let them fly, baby.
Yeah, I was just like, these guys are just like some fucking dorks, man. Right. They're like just making money on. I turned into one of them, but they have no risk. They don't have any skin in the game. I'm out here meeting my customers, going to the beach in Florida, like trying to collect people's information and then bring them back to my martial arts school. Like that's what I felt the business owner, was. And if you weren't doing that kind of hustle grind type of deal, like I discredited you, even if you were making a lot more money than me, right? So it's silly. But
it's interesting those traps we get into in our mind, though.
So true.
Yeah,
it's so true. We limit ourselves.
Yes,
it's mainly our ego that's doing that. Like 100%. That's what it definitely was for me. But when one of the things we were doing to grow the school was I was doing some direct mail type stuff. So like different postcards and flyers and letters and things like that. We weren't even mailing it to people. I think this is actually illegal. I didn't realize this at the time. We were just dropping it in people's in their mailboxes.
Fucking awesome.
I couldn't afford postage, right? It was cheaper for me to just walk around with a bunch of students and make it an activity and say, all right, guys, you get this batch of like 50 letters, you get this 50 letters. All right, disperse, and we come back here in like 2 hours or something, right? So I had the team working for me.
It's like it's like your cardio.
It's exactly what it was. I was like, all right, guys, this is our cardio. We're going to be running here, running back. We're going to be doing squats and push-ups and burpees. It was the workout. And so that's how I did it. So it's kind of funny. But we started getting a little bit of results in regards to like people actually calling us up, coming to the school. So like, that's when the school started growing a little bit. And I was getting some confidence in like my marketing stuff. And I was actually, to kind of step back a little, I was introduced into this marketing and copywriting world of direct response marketing and stuff from my old martial art instructor, Seafood Dwight Woods in Miami, Florida. And when I moved to Jacksonville, Florida, about 300 miles north, I never wanted to compete with him. He's like a father to me. So I'm like, I can never compete with the guy who raised me up in this world.
Yep.
So I moved 300 miles north. We started a school there. and kind of tried using some of the things he taught me. He was he was way further ahead than I was at the time, especially. So anyways, I took what he showed me and did a very small version of it, got a little bit of results with that direct mail stuff. But after that, I took those same letters and posted them into different Facebook groups asking for advice, because I'm just a martial art guy. I need my school to grow, and I'm in these marketing groups. So let's see these marketing gurus teach me something so I can get better.
Yeah.
And so I would post these letters in there and these flyers and say, hey, here's what the results were before. And then I added some testimonials, and here's what the results were after. And here's what we're doing with the direct mail. And I was just kind of breaking down everything I was doing, not to teach or coach anybody in this Facebook group. But at the end, it was like, if you're a copywriter or a marketer, can you tell me how I can make this better and get some more results? And then I had a few people reach out to me, but it wasn't to give me advice. It was to actually like hire me to help them out and like do some marketing.
That's
for
wild.
them. So it was kind of interesting because it was my first time ever having someone ask me for help for that kind of stuff, right? I was a martial art guy. I had nothing to do with marketing, but I charged them like $100 to do something very, like whatever I did. I was like, yeah, give me $100 and I'll do it. $100 was like, that's a ton of money back then. I have no money.
That's like 2 weeks worth. That's like 2-3 weeks worth of food back. I remember those days. I remember those days.
I would go to, this is not good as a martial art guy at the time, but I would go to KFC, and they had these chicken littles for like $1 and change or something at the time. And so I was like, oh, that's like 100 days of food right there.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's exactly how I was thinking. So that I did that a little bit, kind of one thing led to another. And then I started getting more people in those groups because I was very active in these groups asking for advice. But because of that, and also kind of giving advice as well, after I got my first little $100 deal, I was like, well, maybe I can get some more of these.
Yeah. There's a lot of chicken nuggets.
Dude, it blew me away. I went from being almost a pure skeptic of like making any money online to within 6 months after taking on that $100 deal, I made my first $100,000 ever.
Wow.
Right? Like ever. I mean, we made $100,000 in revenue in the gym. We were making $10,000 a month, but it's like it was $0. You know what I mean? Right. This was just, I'm handing in a Google document and I'm getting paid a bunch of money for it. And I'm writing this in my boxers. I can afford a bed spring or a whatever, a bed and stuff now because of this copywriting stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to look into this a little more. So after about 6 months or so, and I was like, okay, this is definitely like giving me much more in revenue than the martial art thing is. My business partner and I ended up closing the school. He was also doing some other things on the side that was starting to take off a little bit more for him. So we were like, all right, we started the martial arts school because we wanted to make money. We were passionate about martial art. We've done this since, we were like 10 years old. Like, this is all we know. If it wasn't martial art, it was going to be the military. It was like, it was two options.
Yeah.
And so, but then when we figured out, like, we each had these other skills that were paying us a little bit more money, we realized martial arts stopped being fun when we started doing it for money because we had to take on students we didn't really like, but we needed to pay the bills. Like,
always seems to happen, man.
I didn't want that, I was like, if I don't like how you're training or your commitment level, I want to just be like, get the fuck out, bro. And I couldn't do that because if I said get the fuck out, I'm now below my break even. Like, I need this guy's money, and I hated that feeling.
I think that's such a pivotal point in all entrepreneurs' journeys if you're opening a brick and mortar place, because you feel like you're being strangled by the business and you don't know how to get out of it because you got into it because you loved this thing, and now this thing has turned into like the bane of your existence, and you start to fall out of love with the thing because of having to pay a rent or do a thing. Man, I think every entrepreneur I've ever talked to is like, dude, that is like when you hit that point, you're just like, what the fuck? I mean, I almost turned everything in at one point too. I was like, fuck it. Like, I'm going back to the truck dock where I knew I showed up at 4 p.m. I left at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I knew what I had to do every day. Done. I hit a point where I was like, that's it. I'm going back to that. I'm glad I didn't. But so I think that really speaks to a lot of people of like what you're talking about, because it's like, damn, that sucks, that feeling,
Yeah, part of me still has like this fantasy. I don't know if I'd actually want to do it because I don't want a martial arts school, but I want to own the school and then just hire my friends to train me and like train other people. Because here's what I missed about it. I missed the camaraderie. I missed being able to go after class. I had open up the back door, and it's in a big alleyway, and in the alleyway we would grill out. Some people would smoke some funny cigarettes out back, and it was just a cool time. It was a cool camaraderie building. It was just a cool time. It was a big family.
And I think as men, we crave that.
Absolutely. Dude, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had women, of course, in like some of our fitness kickboxing programs, some stuff, but it was majority men. It was 100% majority men. And what I realized was a lot of these guys come to us almost like a therapy session. It wasn't really to learn how to beat somebody up. These guys were like 30-something years old, 40-something years old.
Right, you're past the point of hopefully being in a situation where you need that.
Exactly.
Right.
What they wanted, and I realized this early on, was when they would finish training, I would notice a lot of these guys just like lingering, just hanging out, just hanging out, not doing anything, just hanging out, chatting. And then they would also show up sometimes 30 minutes, 45 minutes before class after work. And I was thinking about that, and I'm like, man, these guys go from a lot of these guys didn't have the best home experience. They were going from working all day. They wake up at 7 o'clock, most likely, get to work at like 8 or 9 o'clock, work all day till 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night, come to my class, stay until like 9:30 at night, because the class is 1 hour, but they stay chatting for another hour and a half or something. Then they get home, have to shower. Their kids are probably asleep. Their wife or husband or whatever is probably asleep. And it's just like, I started realizing a lot of these guys came to us for like a release from the real world, and
to escape from that rat race.
That's really what it was. It was a little bit, it wasn't a little bit, but it was definitely sad in my eyes when I started putting some of those pieces together, because these guys became like my friends. But then I'm looking behind the curtain a little. I'm like, well, why are you here? Like, why would you want to spend the majority of your non-working hours like with like us versus your family? And I get wanting to do it, an hour, a couple hours a day, but even till this day, I rush back to hang out with my daughter and my kid and my fiance, because we put her to bed around 8 o'clock. She's asleep finally by 8:45, 9 o'clock. But it's like, if I'm not there, I'm missing a lot of time. Like, I'm trying to get there. I mean, I work from home, but usually I go to a library nearby and work out of there, like as if it's an office. I come back home for lunch or dinner or whatever. But I always try to make sure I'm back by like 4 o'clock. I mean, I don't want just an hour with her. I want to have like the good chunk of the day with her, at least like before she goes to bed. I think, I realized, man, it's tough to see other people go through it. And then I started seeing myself get worked up to where I'm working so much, I'm spending less time with family. I'm like, I can't have that happen.
Yeah. Well, I think it's definitely a thing that I think men go through a little bit more now. So your gym is in essence my cigar lounge, right? Because that's where I have found.
You look like a cigar lounge guy. I play poker at a cigar lounge, and the guy is an uglier version of you.
Well, that's nice. I have to try very hard, but I don't know how to play poker, but I will sit there and smoke a cigar and chat with you guys the whole time. I love it. It's like it does. It's exactly right. So it's so funny, because I'm realizing now, the older I get, how important guy time really is. And during the day at my lounge is when I go. I don't really go at nighttime. I definitely don't go with my daughter or anything like that. But during the daytime, it's all guys. And I find that, like, if a woman walks in, I'm always like, why are you here? It's like, it's 12:30 in the afternoon. Unless you're buying cigars for your husband to leave, this is where guys read books and drink coffee and talk to each other. Like, I'm like super protective of my space. Exactly it. But I barbershop. Yes, I'm starting to, now that I'm putting myself out there more, I'm starting to like really see and question, like, I don't, how do I word this? The narrative out there now is like that women don't actually want to be CEOs. They don't want to be corporate this. They don't want, like, all these things, and they're forcing themselves to do it. And they actually want to be stay-at-home wives. And I've interviewed women on here who have said that, and they were in that world and transitioned over. But I'm starting to see a lot more men get in that world and feel like they're lacking purpose because they're not at the top. Does that make sense? Like, there's a certain few people at the C-suite, and then there's all the other people underneath that are the ones most likely that were at your gym, feeling not the best about themselves and just wanting to escape all day long. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah, I didn't understand at first, but that does make sense. I've noticed that I play a lot of poker. Like I play every day, so I play a lot of poker, and like I noticed that at the poker table too. Like there's guys who may, which I think is good. Like I think we all need. I'll go into this in a second. I'm just mind is scatterbrained.
That's how mine is. So we'll communicate very well. You're good.
But I guys, well, people in general, but I mean, I'm a guy, so I'll talk about guys, but I feel like guys need to have something that they can excel at. It doesn't have to be business. It doesn't have to be their job. Their job could be just the thing they do to make the money to provide for their family. But maybe they're, like I mentioned, poker. There's some guys at the poker table that are, I mean, they're basically pros. I mean, sure, they have a job, but they're basically pros. They're grinding every day. They're making a lot of money. They're considered the best in the casino. They have that sense of like fulfillment where they walk in and they're no longer just, John from whatever his job is. He's like, oh, that's John the Crusher.
Yeah.
John just came in, bro. Fuck. Let's switch tables, And so I think, I mean, I like that. That's how I feel. Right?
I feel when I find something like that 100%, I think you're spot on with it, and whatever that thing is.
Yeah. Well, we have to figure out what that is as guys and as people as general, because a lot of us don't have hobbies. I spoke about it with a good friend of mine, Steve, and he doesn't have a hobby. He's mid 50s and he doesn't, he used to do martial art, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, and some football stuff, but he hasn't done anything. All he does is go to work, come home, watch TV, have a beer, have dinner, hang out with his daughter and his wife, go to sleep, do the exact same thing 5 or 6 days a week. And I think that's it. And I can tell he's not fulfilled, even though he makes a good living, a very good living, and he provides for his family very well. Like he's loved, but he's just not really fulfilled. And I talked to him about it. I'm like, what are your hobbies? And he's like, hobbies, bro. I'm not a child. I haven't had hobbies since I was a kid. I'm like, that's your fucking problem, bro. Yeah. You have fun in your life. You've literally been on the same hamster wheel for like 30 years. And you're wondering why nothing has changed. You're not feeling that fulfillment. You don't know what you want to do. Because he even told me, he's like, it's so lucky. You know what you want to do in life. You have your own business. I'm like, copywriting and marketing isn't who I am. It's what I do to like fund my life. My life is my daughter, the poker table, traveling to the woods and camping out. Like that's my life. This business stuff, I've just happened to arrange it so it works around my lifestyle. I'm not doing business most of the day and trying to squeeze in life. I'm doing life and business happens to fund it, right? And so it's like people just have to find, I don't want to say their purpose, that's kind of a big catch-all phrase, but they have to have something. And I think hobbies are very good because those hobbies can turn into passions, and that can make you want to get better at something. When you're getting better at something, like, man, I feel good when I'm getting better at poker. I study poker like a nerd. I've got this like software that tells me the game theory optimal moves that I'm making or not making, the percent pot, all this crazy stuff. And it's a lot for me to learn, but it's like an adventure. It's something I know I'm getting better. I'm actively learning. It's a cool thing. And I can compete with other people, which I think is another thing, at least for guys. I like to compete. I am not going to go compete in martial art anymore and get a headache when I get hit in the head.
Right. Right.
But I love competing. And so poker for me fills that competition where you can still feel pain if you lose money. I like that because there's real consequence, but it's also a beatable game. You're playing against other people. It's competition, right? So right. I think all that type of stuff is like ingrained in men's DNA to compete, to thrive, to try to be the top dog in whatever it is they're trying to be the top dog in. But I think a lot of folks nowadays, a lot of guys specifically, they still have it in them, but they've never brought it out. They don't even know what it looks like to be that kind of person.
And I think what I've witnessed and seen is not only have they never brought it out, but because they've never brought it out in a, let's say, sports setting, in a setting that was a container for it, that when it starts to well up inside of you, you almost get terrified of what could come out because you've never done it in a controlled environment before. And I've talked to other guys about that. I'm like, this again is the importance of doing it in that container and learning how, like, you don't want uncontrolled rage let out, right? You want to be able to control these. And I think, again, that's where a lot of this, I believe, comes from, is these men just living unfulfilled lives of, again, like what you said with having hobbies. Hobbies give you a reason to wake up in the morning because you fucking love doing them. And it's one of the things my daughter has taught me. Again, she just reinforces. And the older she gets, you're going to notice the exact same thing. They're going to just reinforce all of these things that we actually want but are so afraid to have. Like in the mornings, she's like, we got to play, Dad. We got to play together. We have to color together. Relax, Dad. The dishes don't need done right now. And she's helping reinforce all these things of like play. And like this morning, we just stopped. I took my coffee. I sat down with her. We colored. I'm like, baby, we got about 10 minutes before we have to leave the house. She's like, fine, we're going to color for 10 minutes. And I'm like, there's a lot of other things I need to do in those 10 minutes. She's like, we're coloring. I'm like, all right, you know what? Yeah. We are coloring. But it brought me so much like joy. And I'm like, oh my God, these little things they live how we're supposed to live. But to your testament, we get caught up in thinking that we're a businessman and that's our identity. Instead of all these other things, coach, father, if you're active in your church, or musician, poker player, archer, like whatever, you can have all these other identities, but we teach now that you have to be so laser focused on one thing that we shut everything else out to get that next thing.
Yeah, you see that, I think, in a lot of like very successful entrepreneurs. I have some clients of mine that are super successful of that. Their entire identity, it's kind of sad to a degree. It is sad. Their entire like value is in how much money they make. So like they can, and I also have clients who are like really well balanced in some senses. Like they got their family, they got a very successful 8-figure business, which is fucking in my mind, that's very successful.
Very successful.
But they also spend time with their family and like prioritize things and have like created systems in their life so that they're not always hung up on doing the business type of stuff. They put people in place to help them. And then when they have a bad month or something negative happens in their month, the guys who I found are a little bit more balanced, like they don't let it affect them. The people who their entire like worth is tied up into how well their business does. When their business doesn't do, if it's doing $1 million a month and it drops to $300,000 a month 1 month because some crazy fuck up happened, it's like they almost feel like killing themselves. It's crazy. Like they're totally depressed because it's like, I'm not a good man. I didn't make the $1 million a month. I'm $1 million a month guy. Well, like your business is $1 million a month thing right now. That's not you though. You're the operator that built it. You're the one who grew it. You could do it again if you wanted, but you're not tied to its results. Like you can't control nature. And that's kind of like nature in a sense, like there's science to it about
the ebbs and flows and cycles of all of it. Yeah.
You can't control it, man. You can't control some of these things. You can do your best, but when something really fucks up, it doesn't mean that, your worth is tied to that fuck up. It's just like your worth is tied to how you deal with the fuck up. That's really where it's at. But I think a lot of people get tied to that end result a little too much.
One, I think that's the example then you set for your children is how, like, so when I've talked about this a little bit on here before, but I have, before my divorce, I was like super stoic and maybe only cried twice in my life. Like there was no emotions, there was no nothing. Then I went through the divorce and hired a life coach that changed my life and kind of cracked me open. And then I'm like, I do want to be more of this stable structure for Sloan, but I don't want her to hide. I don't want her to never see Dad having feelings and all these things. So I started showing all these, not purposely showing these emotions there, but if something came up, I don't hide it from her. I don't go walk in the other room if I need to let something out. I do it in front of her. But I think that it's important that then our children see the response, because then that's how they develop how they're going to respond when these situations happen in life, by watching us, not by what we say.
Yeah, you had a post about that on Instagram. I don't know when it was. I think it was whenever we first started chatting. I was going through it and you said, I don't remember exactly, but it was something about how you teach your daughter to work through her feelings and then like continue on with life, not just like wallow in it or suppress it or something. And I thought that was really cool. Not many people, especially fathers, I feel like do that type of stuff. You know what I mean? Like the fact that you were smart enough to get yourself a coach to help work through like any internal issues, that's huge, because you're not just doing it for you, right? You're doing it for her.
Well, and I think I often think about that sometimes. Like as a man, I'm like, if I'd have went through the divorce the way I did before, if I just been like, fuck it, whatever. If I didn't have a child, like I'm just going to turn the other way. I'm going to dive headfirst into the business and become one of these people that we potentially just talked about that ties all my worth to that because of everything else. And I couldn't be more grateful for the situation I was in and the coach that I hired, because she's like, but is that what you would want Sloan to do? And I'm like,
Oh, what a good question. Yeah, that's a really good question. That gave me chills.
Yeah. And so I asked that question a lot, and it's interesting. So I just did this is all pertains to it. So I just did a 72-hour fast, and it's the first time I'd ever done anything like that.
Gosh.
Dude, it was awesome.
12-hour fast. Sure, maybe. I don't know. Holy moly.
It ended up being awesome, and it was really what I found out. It was just all mental. That's all it is, and it would really like push my mental capacity, and I fucking love that. But going into this, I have a friend who has done a few of these, and so I messaged her. She's one of my daughter's godmothers, and I was like, hey, I drink a lot of caffeine. I'm a dad. I'm a single father. Like, if I could put it in an IV bag and just walk around with caffeine, coffee in my IVs, I would all day. I'm like, look, the headaches are going to be fucking brutal. I'm like, what do I do here? Can I drink coffee? And she's like, well, what's the intention of the fast? I'm like, well, for me, it's mental fortitude. I want to prove to myself that I can do this thing that is supposed to be hard because I just want to better myself. She goes, okay, then no coffee. And I'm like, what do you mean no coffee? I'm like, the headache's going to be brutal. And she's like, okay, so then what would you tell Sloan in this situation if she was doing this? And I was like, fuck. I'm like, I would tell her that we built a very strong mind, and that our mind is stronger than a headache, and we can control it, and we can do all of these things. And I'm like, I hate you so much, Taylor. But it's true. If you just think back of like and Sloan was so fucking proud of me. Like, she knew I was doing it. She was with her mom. She called. She's like, did you do it, Dad? I'm like, I did it, baby girl. She's like, yeah, was so proud that like Dad did what he said. And like I don't know how we got on that, but I do teach her a lot of those times, like, feel your feelings. They're all real. They're all valid, but we are not staying in them. They do not control us, and I think that comes back to, which was going to be my next question for you, was like, okay, because I think I'm in a transition point with Sloan where I know I am. She is at this point now where she wants to start earning money. She does these drawings, and she's like, I can sell this drawing. She makes this thing. She's like, I can sell. She's 6.
Oh, wow.
She's
nice. Oh, yeah.
Pretty advanced too for 6, but she's at this point where she wants to do all these things. And I'm like, okay, how do I foster this? And then I start questioning my beliefs on things. I'm like, okay, but I don't want her to think she has to trade time for money. And I don't want, but even though that is a part of business, is time for money, but if she structured herself in the right way and owned property, she wouldn't necessarily need to trade time for money. And I'm like, but I know all these principles are going into her subconscious mind. So I don't want to give her an allowance because I don't want her to think she deserves a handout for not actually doing any work. And then I don't want to make her do chores around the house and be like, okay, well, now you're getting paid for things that you should just do. Like, your dishes need done. I don't want you to grow up thinking like, oh, I did the dishes. When am I getting $5? So I'm in this weird transition phase of like, how the fuck do I teach this 6-year-old money in this abundant way, kind of like you talk about, where it just kind of funds my lifestyle to where I don't know. So do you have suggestions, or have you thought about this? Because you seem very analytical. Like, you don't just do, like, everything seems very systematic to me when you do things.
Kind of. I mean, somewhat. I mean, I'm definitely more of a do it and kind of figure it out.
Okay, that's how I am.
Like, I do try to plan a little bit, but I'm not going to get, like, if I have 7 out of the 10 steps, I'm just going to start.
Yeah. Okay. I usually start with 1 and then figure out the next 9, but that's how this whole thing started. I'm just like, someone's like, start a podcast. I'm like, okay, I ordered some things online and plugged them into my computer and did one. I'm like, that didn't work. What do I do next?
There we go. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So I've kind of thought about it, but not so. My daughter's 2 years old, but I've thought about it for sure. And so one of the things I was thinking about is just, I'm okay with her trading time for dollars, because before you cannot trade time for dollars, you have to trade time for dollars. Like, you have to be the one to set up the system. Like, I may not write all of the copy I write for my clients now because I'll have junior copywriters to help me, but I didn't have junior copywriters before. I had to do the work and then create the systems and then teach the systems to someone else to try and help me. And so what I think is okay is like, let them like my niece and nephew, when they were younger in Miami, they mangoes are super big in Miami, like mango.
I'm not far from there. Yeah.
Yeah, so they would have tons of mangoes that would fall into their yard. They would set up a table in front of like the main intersection by their house, and they were like probably your daughter's age, maybe a little bit older. So, and my sister would sit out there with them, and they would learn to sell. They would learn to, what signs might be good for marketing to stop people in traffic. And my daughter and my sister did a good job, I think, of kind of like fostering that. Like she would teach them marketing with it. She's not a marketer, she's a teacher, but she would teach them marketing.
Yeah.
She's like, what sign do you think is going to stop these people? Like your cute little kids, maybe if you're holding the sign, they'll stop faster. Maybe that. So they started thinking a little bit more strategically. And I like that idea. Like, I like the idea of teaching my daughter to sell lemonade, because we don't have mangoes in Arizona, but like lemonade or something like that to people. And if she eventually decides that she wants to learn how to like do that more often, then yeah, I would probably want to talk to her about how to get like her little friends involved, and then start scaling it up with friends and making it a fun adventure where she's maybe managing it a little.
Yeah.
There was a story, I want to say it's by Gary Vee. I haven't listened to Gary Vee in a couple years, but I like his stuff. It was just getting a little repetitive.
Same.
But his stuff is solid. So he had a story, I think, where he would have a bunch of lemonade stands, and then his friends would run it. He would pay them a certain percentage, and then basically be the boss on his like bike, collecting all the money from the lemonade stands that his friends are running. So I thought about that, and I'm like, well, like that's kind of cool. That's a natural progression. So I don't know. I don't think she needs to, like, at least for my daughter, I don't think she needs to like go from not knowing how to sell anything to like having a team under her and scaling it up and trying to like not trade time for dollars, because trading time for dollars is what teaches you don't want to trade time for dollars.
I think that's a good way to look at it. That's a very good way to look at it. And it's interesting when you're in it, you just start thinking about all these different things, and then you end up in the rabbit hole, and you're like, now I don't know what to do.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I used to do stuff that it was so cool because I was entrepreneurial. I didn't realize it till later on in life. I used to go into my backyard and cut flowers from my parents' garden, and then go door to door and tell people. It was a little scammy, as the marketer was coming out of me. So instead of selling it straight up, what I would do is have people buy a raffle ticket, because I got the idea from a cereal box when I was eating cereal with my mom. I was like 8, maybe, I don't know, I was a child, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is it? She's like, it's a raffle. If you like send it in, you have the chance to win this prize. And so that stuck in here. I was like, well, the prize for me is going to be these flowers I just cut. I'm going to walk around all of the neighbors. I'm going to say, hey, do you want to enter a raffle for $1 to see if you can win these flowers? And I had like one person give me $5 or something.
Yeah.
And then I came home. No one else did. I came home. I had my $5. My mom was like, someone gave you money? I was like, yeah. The neighbor, right? Like literally our next door neighbor gave me money. She's like, well, did you give him the flowers? I was like, no, I won. Money. And I said it like that. I'm like, I won. And so it's like, she's like, no, you have to go give him the flowers. I ended up having to go back. She made me give him some flowers. But if she didn't do that, I would have just turned into a huckster. I was like, well, I got mine. You know what I mean? Like, I baited you with the flower, you entered the sweepstakes, and I win.
Yeah, why not?
But that was like my first kind of getting into this entrepreneurial thing where I made money out of nothing. And it was so cool. Like I physically had to do I was trading my time for dollars, but it was like the best $5 I'd ever made. It was the first $5 I ever made. And it still sticks with me to this day. I'm 36, and that happened like 30 something years ago. You know what I mean? Like, it's wild.
It is wild. I used to do, I didn't do quite, I mean, I grew up in the Northeast. I'd shovel driveways, I'd bale hay, we'd do all that stuff. But when I was younger, when I was in like I think I was in 6th grade, because I was on that bus, and Pokemon cards were like kind of big. So for like $5, you could get the pack, and you could get the holographic card out of it, right? And so I would get all these, and then I would trade, and I would do all these things for these Pokemon cards, and then I would go to school and I'd sell the good ones to the kids. And so I made, mind you, I wish I just kept all those fuckers, because now I'm like, how? I'm like,
could keep that business going even more.
I know. I'm like, Jesus. But I remember one day I went to school and I made $130.
Whoa.
Selling Pokemon cards. And then my mom was getting phone calls and stuff because, well, kids don't have $20, $30, $40 for a Charizard. But I'm like, yo, you want it? It's $30, you know? And so they're like stealing it from their parents to get the money to buy the fucking card.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, man.
Oh God,
Yeah.
that is so funny.
Yeah, it was
That is
awesome. So I
But see,
definitely
like,
can resonate with that.
yeah, dude, I feel like all of those little experiences, like if you were to do, like, allow your daughter the opportunity to do stuff like that, whether it's in school or not in school or whatever, like
Yeah.
just around the neighborhood, that type of stuff builds character. It helps them get out of their shell, and it shows them like they can do, like, how accomplishing is that? Like, damn, you made $100, like, on your own accord. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
You know,
Especially in 6th grade, dude. I'm like, what do I want to buy? I can get anything in the world right now. Like Xboxes were still only like $199, like you could get anything you wanted.
Is so much money in 6th grade. I remember in 5th or 6th grade, my buddy Jordan Kircher and I were talking about, I don't know how this comes up, but you just mentioned, and I'm remembering us walking through like the lunch table areas and stuff, and something about $100 came up. I can't remember the context, obviously.
Yeah.
But I was, whoa, $100? Like, $100. I'm like, that's so much money.
Yeah, dude. God.
Oh my.
Go back to those days, like that was the thing.
Probably, yeah. He probably got it as like a Christmas gift or something from like a rich uncle, and I don't know, but I remember hearing that.
Yeah, but it's like you're the king of the fucking world with $100 back then, dude. Yeah, that was always awesome. I love that. So I get let's talk about what are some of the values you want to instill in her. I mean, she's only 2, but these are things I thought about, like at an early age. Like, what do I want to, like, if you thought about what kind of school you want to send her to, because our school system's kind of failing itself,
Doing homeschooling.
You're going to do homeschooling?
Yeah, we're going to do homeschooling. We decided that even before she was born.
Amazing.
We're gonna do homeschooling. Yeah, I don't like a lot of the bad programming in schools, man. I don't know. I just don't. Doesn't resonate with me and my views a lot at all.
Same.
And then the other thing is the way I looked at it. I've looked at this even before I had my daughter, and now it just like solidifies it more. I always looked at schools as like cheap babysitting or free babysitting, because it's like, or it's not even really babysitting. The parents are the babysitters, because you're going to have your kid for what, like, they're going to be asleep during the night. So let's not count any of that time as you with them. So they're going to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning for you to take them to school. So you got from 7 to 8 with them. Then they're with these fucking rando people, these teachers that you trust, from 8 to 3 or 4 p.m. or maybe longer if they have to do after school care. Then they get home and there's no bonding. They got homework, right? So you got to make sure you're eating, showering, did their homework, and then there's maybe an hour left where you can hang out with them, watch some TV, and like paralyze your brain, and then they go to sleep, and you repeat that cycle all over again. And then when they're teenagers, you like wonder, I don't have a teenager, so this is pure speculation.
Sure.
Obviously. We're gonna be like, get the fuck out of here with your 2-year-old. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. But I think by the time you're a teenager, then if you've been raised like that, you haven't really been raised by your parents or your family. Yep. You've been raised by the school system, and go home to your parents to babysit you while you go to sleep. That is how I love that mindset.
I love that approach.
Yeah, I just couldn't do it. And so I thought about that even before she was born. And then when she was born, I like doubled down on that. And my fiance is the same way. She thinks the same way. So I'm like very fortunate in that sense. And we both thought about it. Like, we want to raise our kid. We don't want the school system to raise our kid and then give them back to us fucked up, where we have to now
then undo the programming.
Undo the bad programming. Yeah. I mean, I see it with family members of my own that are, have been brought up through the school system, and they're spitting out the same shit. Like the media. God, I do not make shit political.
Yeah, I know it's unfortunate that that's where it goes. Well, I mean, this is kind of how we got. It is, and it's kind of how we got. So Sloan is in a Waldorf school, which I don't know if you know anything about that, but it's amazing. If you are not going to homeschool, that's where to go. If not, you got to homeschool. I mean, that's in my world, those are the only 2 options. But I had this conversation when my ex-wife and I were together. I was like, I don't really know what to do here, because I can't send her to a public school or a school that is going to make her do homework, because I didn't do my homework growing up. And my argument with the teachers was I was here for 8 fucking hours. I got here at 7:45 in the morning. I'm leaving at 2:30, 3:30 in the afternoon. If you didn't teach it to me, it's not my fucking fault. It's time to go play. It's time to whatever. Like, you had 8 hours. And I believe that in my core. So I will not make my daughter do homework when she comes home from school. It is not happening. It's time to play with dad. It's time to go outside. It's time to run. It's time to do whatever we're going to do together, because I do have a limited amount of time. And so that was one of the things that looking in the school systems, I'm like, how am I going to navigate this? Because I will argue with the teacher until I'm blue in the face because she's not doing it. you know, like I don't believe in that, you know? And so it was interesting, but then we found, you know, the Waldorf school, and I was blown away by it and how they are, you know, brought up and all of those kinds of things. And like in my mind, where we're at, they plan to build the rest of the high school out through so that the kids can go, but it's not done yet. It's only done until they're 12. But in my mind at 12, I'm kind of like, you know, I hope she just asked me like, Dad, let's just do a business together. Let's do something, you know? And it's like, cool. Yeah. Take your test, get your GED, and let's go fucking build something.
Yeah, I don't look at school anymore like it used. I feel like it's just becoming less and less valuable, especially like the internet. Like, I mean, my daughter has learned so much from watching Miss Rachel on YouTube. It's ridiculous. Like Miss Rachel is some YouTube teacher basically that teaches them like their ABCs, their colors, all this shit. And then my daughter's sitting there eating Fruit Loops and shit, looking at it, whatever, and just repeating back what the teacher is saying. She's like, okay, and what is this? Can you say cat or whatever? And my daughter's like, oh, cat. Yeah, like she's all into it, you know?
Yeah,
She loves it.
Yeah.
It's so I just feel like school was a very important thing before the internet, and then as the internet has matured, and it's still very young, but it's like continue to get better. AI is out, you know, like there's so many different ways to educate yourself, and you don't need to go to school. Like school was designed to help turn you into a good worker.
Yeah. So I mean, it's literally why the bell was made. To mimic the exactly bell. Right. It was just fucking nuts. Talk about subconscious programming at its core. And ironically, which is why I probably own my own business, I fucking hated the bell.
Yeah. You know, so, dude, yeah. That's exactly it. But, you know, you go to school 7 to 3 or whatever it is, 8 to 3, whatever the time is. You go 5 days a week, and then when you grow up and get a real job, you go to work from like 7 to 6, and then you get off on the weekends if you're lucky. And it's like the exact same thing. I remember telling my brother that, and he was just like, God, I feel like such a sheep. Never even thought of this shit. You're like, that's crazy. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it served its purpose. Like it served a good use when it was needed. Like,
sure.
You need that. But just now you don't need it as much. And I think it's just, we're trying to hold on to something that doesn't need to be held on to anymore. You know, like you don't need 8 hours in fucking school to learn anything.
No, you know,
like 2 or 3 hours, then you're solid, and then go focus on experiencing life and learning real life skills to apply the knowledge maybe that you're learning. Like you're learning how to read, go learn for 2 hours a day, and then go read like a fucking book out here in the wilderness or some shit. Like I don't know. Like
no, I mean, you're speaking my language. I mean, I just went up to because I'm in a point now in my life where, and I think this will resonate with people, but I know it resonates with how you're thinking and talking is, you know, the goal is to build this dad time into its own business that is self-sustainable so that I can do things with Sloan as I want to. And I'm not tied to my chiropractic office and doing all these things and trading time for money. And like, it's all like in the works. Right. And I just drove up to Asheville last weekend and just was there for 2 days in the mountains. And my daughter loves the mountains. And like today I was taking her to school and she goes, let's go back to Pennsylvania, you know? And like, cause my family's from there and we kept 28 acres and, you know, it's on the side of a mountain and it's fucking great. Right. You know, it's amazing. And so I'm like looking at flights and all this stuff, but like I can't go because of work. And I'm like, okay, this is what gets to change because these are the things I want to be able to do with her. I want to be able to go with her. I want to be able to give her all of these things to where we're hiking and fishing and hunting and doing all this stuff that she loves to do and nurturing that aspect of her that's going to serve her so much better in life than anything else. I guarantee you, sitting alone quietly in the woods when I was 12 years old for hours on end served my mind better than anything I might have learned in school.
Oh, I agree. I discovered that later on in life. I think if I had some kind of alone time as a kid, even if it's like 10 minutes a day, just go sit here in the fucking under a tree, literally. I mean, I sound like a hippie, but like just go do it. I definitely feel, I have no science to back this up. I'm not a scientist. I haven't really researched it, but I know I feel like recharged in nature. I just do. I go touch a tree. I feel recharged.
So there is actually crazy research with that. I read a book. I want to say the book was called Peak Performance, something like that. And they did these studies everybody listening, don't quote me on the numbers. You'll get the principle of whatever it was. And they took people that were in like a working environment or whatever, and then they showed them like on a screen this, like they took a break and they showed them on the screen of their computer like a cityscape. And so for like 10 minutes, something like that. And then they took the creativity test again, and their creativity increased, I think, 10%. Okay. Then they showed them a mountain scene of like beautiful mountains on their computer screen with a 10-minute break-ish. And I think their creativity increased 30%. Again, it's been like a decade since I read this book. Increased 30%. But the principle still stands true. Then they took people and they took them in a break and they made them walk in the city. Like just walk. And it increased whatever percentage. Then they took people and they put them in the woods and walked for 10 minutes. And I think it was a 70% increase in creativity. Just walking in nature for 10 fucking minutes.
Wow, man, why do I keep getting chills, bro? I keep getting chills every time you say these cool things.
And it's like,
I think,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I mean, to me, it's just like, that's how we're supposed to fucking live. Like, I crave it. I live down here in South Florida, not too far from Miami, you know, and I crave those mountains. I used to tell myself it's just because I grew up in a mountain. That's why I crave it. But I'm like, my daughter didn't, and she fucking, like, when I told her I was going to Asheville, she's like, what do you mean you're going to Asheville? Without me? And I'm like, well, baby girl, you're with your mom, and dad sometimes gets to do things by himself now and then. She's like, I don't know about this.
I don't approve.
Yeah, I don't approve of this at all. Are there mountains there? Yes, baby girl, there's mountains there. I definitely don't approve. You know, it's like, what kind of fuckery is this? But
you're in Florida. Where in Florida are you?
So I'm in Delray.
Delray Beach?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to link up with you. I go to Florida sorry, I went off topic, but
no.
I go to Florida every year to go visit family because we have family in Jacksonville, Florida, and like some of the small towns around there, and then down in Miami, Florida. So I actually drive my truck because it's like I bring my 2 Chihuahuas, my daughter, I bring a bunch of shit.
I love
stay
it.
Down there for like a month and a half, so it's easier to truck. So I'll drive, and I just come from Arizona all the way down through Florida, and Delray is on the east side.
East side, yeah. So you'll hit it right before Miami. So we'll and if not, I'll drive down to Miami. I can drive to Jacksonville. It's a 2.5 hour, 3 hour drive or whatever.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to link up for sure, man. Because I know I passed Delray for sure.
Yeah, and if you come from Jacksonville to Miami, you pass Delray.
I do. Yeah, I usually I come in from Pensacola, hit Jacksonville, stay there for a little bit, and then drive down all the way to Miami. So, anyways. I heard Florida, and I always like to meet Florida. Well, you're not Floridian, but whatever.
Yeah, but I'm here though. I'm here. We believe. Just more people that believe in freedom. That's what you really want to meet.
Yeah, pretty much.
But
it's funny you mentioned the mountain thing because I've always loved mountains. When I was in a little kid, I mean, I grew up like I said in Miami, and then we went to North Carolina for like a family trip. Raleigh's in North Carolina, right?
Mm-hmm.
Raleigh, North Carolina. I think that's where we went.
Raleigh, beautiful over there. Beautiful.
Yeah. So we went there. I was young. I was 10, 12, something years old. I don't remember. But it was my first time going to like some wooded mountain areas because, down south in South Miami, you got like palm trees, beach, swamp.
That's it.
Different type of nature.
Yeah.
And
by the way, the nature down here, when I'm in Pennsylvania with Sloan, she fucking runs in the creek and's gone. Like she's running around with the other kids all day long, and I don't bat an eye. Like I'm like, I know what's out there. It's no big deal. We'll check you for ticks. You're fucking good to go. I am terrified of Florida's nature.
Gators, baby.
Oh my God, all of it. I'm like snakes, big spider, like all this shit. I'm like, not for fucking me. I don't want to.
My fiance's brother, I got both of them, her dad, all of them, real Florida man shit. They wrestle alligators and they relocate them and stuff. So they'll catch an alligator that's like a teenage alligator. They jump in the water with it, wrestle that thing, tie the mouth up, and then I don't know how legal this is, whatever. They take it and then transport it to their local, closer to where they live lake so that it grows into a big one, and then they hunt it. They eat it.
Listen, what's crazy about that to me is
real Florida man shit.
That's real Florida man shit. And I, in my 20s, before like I had a child, I probably would have been like, that sounds like a good fucking time. Like I want to try that. Now I'm like, Like I'm like, nah.
I'm just like watching it, dude. I like watching it. I've seen these guys wrestle alligators, and I'm like, how are you not terrified? And
dude, what we'll do is we'll get cigars, we'll watch them wrestle alligators, and I'll watch you play poker, and I'll just enjoy myself all fucking afternoon.
That's it, dude. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
So tell me about this first trip to Raleigh. I mean, because it's gorgeous over there.
Yeah, it was beautiful. We had trees. I want to say this is 20-something years ago. I want to say we were in, I don't know if it's like hilly area or a mountain. To me, it was a mountain.
Yeah.
From Miami, anything that's got a slope is a mountain, like, you know?
Yeah.
So I remember being in there, and my family like did a open house tour, but it was just to look at, they weren't actually going to buy anything. They just wanted to go look at this like beautiful house in the middle of the woods and shit. I thought we were moving there. I fucking fell in love. Like the realtor was probably like, oh, we're going to close this deal. Cause I was running around like, oh my God, I could live here. Look at all the mountains. Look at the trees. Oh my, we might even see a deer. Deer out here. Like there's no deer in Miami. They get eaten by alligators. There's no deer. It's like, it's unbelievable. And so we ended up obviously not moving there, but I remember that experience like, oh, I gotta move into the mountains. I gotta experience this. It just, I felt so, I had so much fun. I didn't do anything. I was just hanging out in the woods, like playing with dirt, you know? And when I moved to Arizona is a different type of beauty. I find it beautiful, but it's not the same type of North Carolina type of wooded area, unless you go into northern. Have you been to Arizona?
I've never been to Arizona. I want to go there. So yeah.
Okay, so northern Arizona reminds me of like the Carolinas, essentially.
Interesting.
It's got big old pine, like huge pine trees, very mountainy. I mean, you're in the mountains.
Yeah.
And it's not desert like at all. And so it's like you go from desert in the Phoenix area, kind of where I'm at now, to drive 2 hours north, and you're in mountains, pine trees, deer, elk, moose, fucking everything is out there.
Wow.
And it's total. So that's when I started really falling in love with Arizona, because I do like the desert beauty. Like it's not, a lot of people don't, but I really like it. I think it's beautiful. Sunsets, I love it. But I also really love that I can go 2 hours north and I'm in the woods.
Yeah.
And so I do that a lot. And then like I got a truck. I traded my Corvette for a truck because I'm like, I can't really.
You're hooked now. It's over.
Yeah, bro. I'm like, I'm becoming a full mountain man.
I love it.
Like,
I love it.
This Corvette. Let's get a truck. And so now we take the truck. We'll go fish. Oh, I'm not a fit. My fiance is a way better fisherman. Woman than
yeah.
But I like going in there, you know, eating some food under a tree and shit, going up in the middle of nowhere.
Dude, it's the best.
What I started finding is like I'll look on my Onyx map or whatever the off-grid maps are and shit, and I'll look for these little like watering holes in the middle of the mountain that's not an actual like a resort or real lake that people go to, and I'm like, that looks like just a big ass puddle of water in the middle of nowhere. And so you could you take the truck up, you put in 4-wheel drive, you get your ass over there, and it's like a secluded mini lake.
And the cell phone doesn't work, and it's fucking great.
Cell phone doesn't work.
That's the key.
Dude, it's the coolest experience. So anyways, I fell in love with Arizona. I ended up doing all that. I visit, you know, northern Arizona once every couple months, at least for a few days or a week. And then I bought 40 acres of land, not in the Pine area. That's where that's my second place I wanted, because that's like beautiful. Yeah. But a little bit more north in like the height. It's like 6,500 feet up in the air. And
wow.
So there's juniper trees. There are some pine trees there, but it's very wild. And what I bought this because I saw that Rambo movie, one of the latest Rambo movies, where he's like got underground tunnels and all this cool shit. I was like, I want that. And so I looked up, I found 40 acres up north for $40,000. It was a stupid, very cheap.
Yeah, buy it. Just buy it to buy it. Yeah.
So I bought it to buy it. And then the thing that really sold me was the real estate agent guy or whatever. He's like, all right, when you're out here, I also have to let you know there's no reception here. You can get Starlink. If you want to get Starlink, you definitely do that. But it's lawless out here. This literally is the Wild West. The closest police station, hospital is about 60 miles away. No one is coming to save you. And there's mountain lions up here, you know, coyotes, elk, deer, like bear. There's just, if you're out here, just make sure you're prepared. So when he told me that, as an unprepared Miami guy who's just learning this wilderness shit, I was like, fucking take my money. Like, I want this.
I lived in Florida, bitches. I got this.
Yeah. I'm like, this guy said lawlessness. There's no. I'm like, you sold me.
You just described Florida, but with mountains.
With mountains, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I grew up. We're gonna wrap up here soon, real quick. But I grew up in northwestern Pennsylvania, where we didn't have cell phones. We still don't have cell phone service. Like, our internet is trash. We had dial-up internet until, like, I don't know, 10 years ago. You know, like, I think my dad's house has Windstream internet. Like, what the fuck is Windstream internet? Like, you know, like, I mean, it's still like that. You know, I mean, it's 20 miles to fucking Walmart. You know, I'm like, it's not quite as excluded as that, but where I'm at, it wouldn't be hard to move a few miles and find that. You know, like yeah. So I think it's amazing. And when you get up there and just spend a few days there, again, when I went to Asheville and I disconnected, I was so recharged. Like, I didn't even want to pick up the phone after. Like, I find that when I get in those environments like you're talking about, you realize you don't even want the other stuff. You're just like, you're there with your fiance and your kid, and you're just going to be like, this is it. This is everything, you know? It's awesome.
I love it, dude. There's I won't keep going on it, but I love it. It just the wilderness aspect, having my daughter go out there, knowing that there might be a mountain lion, so I have to go out there with my gun and protect her as well. It's just a cool fucking feeling.
Adrenaline going through it. It's a great feeling.
It is. I wake up early in the morning, go for a walk, and be like, okay, careful if we see any lions, baby. Careful if we see any bears. You got to let daddy know. She's all fucking, oh yeah, look at that adventure out here.
Hell yes. See, that's how to raise them. Cool. We're gonna mic drop and end it on that. Let's do another one of these. Shoot me a message, and when you're coming down here, this is gonna be, dude. I can't thank you enough for getting on here. This was so awesome. Thank you, dude. Thank you. Awesome, brother. Well, hold on real quick before we cut this off. Tell people if they want to work with you in your company.
Sure.
Yeah,
if anybody so we didn't talk too much about it, but if you guys want to learn more about how to become a copywriter, which is a person that writes ads and emails and marketing material for different companies, you can make a very good living at it, and you can do it from the comfort of your own home in the wilderness. It doesn't really matter as long as you got internet. If you want to learn more about how to do that, just go to trythisbiz.com, and then just enter your info, watch a free video, and see if it's a good fit.
Boom. Awesome, man. Thank you so much for this. This was amazing.
Thank you, man.
All right. Have a good one, brother. See ya.